Rich HOA president refused to pay for the new road. Yeah, he actually had the nerve to do that. So I came back with my crew to take the asphalt back. I'll tell you everything. But first, let me introduce myself. My name is Hank Johnson, but folks around here just call me the excavator. The day this all came to a head, my trucks were lined up at the entrance of the fanciest gated community in Miami-Dade. Backup alarms beeping, neighbors stopping to stare and record. We weren't there to lay asphalt. We were there to take it back. I was standing in the middle of that pristine new road my crew had finished a few weeks earlier, white button-up, old jeans, clipboard in my hand. To them, I looked like the maintenance guy. To me, it was just another job site I was about to undo. Then Todd came storming out of his glass and steel palace, tank top, smartwatch flashing. "You can't do this," he yelled. "I'm the HOA president." I calmly flipped to page 3 of the contract and held it up so he and every recording neighbor could see. "Actually, Todd," I said, "this is exactly what I can do when I don't get paid." Behind me, I raised my hand and gave a small circular wave. "Boys, let's take our road back." The first bite of the excavator bucket tore through that perfect black surface, and you could hear the whole neighborhood gasp. What Todd didn't know was that I'd been 3 steps ahead of him from the moment he signed that paper. Stick around till the end. The twist is out of movie. And go ahead and subscribe, because around here HOAs always get their payback with interest. I didn't always live behind a gate with palm trees and a golf course. Most of my life was dust, diesel, and fast food coffee on job sites from Jacksonville to Key West. I started in this line of work when I was 18, running shovels and flagging traffic for guys who call me kid and rookie and never once remember my actual name. Somewhere along the way, I learned every inch of a road, how it settles, how it cracks, and how it can tell you who cut corners. I married young. My wife, Denise, used a joke that she was married to the asphalt man, and his mistress was the next contract. She was the organized one, the one who made sure bills were paid, that the kids had lunch money, that I didn't forget to eat something that wasn't from a gas station. When she got sick and then didn't get better, that's when the crew became more than workers to me. They stuck around when the jobs were thin. They came to the hospital. They carried her casket. After she passed, I didn't buy a boat or a sports car. I bought an apartment with a quiet view over a golf course and a 2-bedroom floor plan I could keep spotless. Beige carpet, old wooden furniture, photos of Denise on every wall. To most people in the building, I looked like the guy who cleaned the pool and checked the sprinklers. That suited me just fine. By then, I'd done well. Decades of contracts, never missing deadlines, never cutting quality, quietly reinvesting. On paper, I was worth more than most of the people parking their German cars downstairs. In person, I was a skinny older black guy in a floral short-sleeved shirt and sandals with socks, carrying a battered clipboard. It's funny how people only see what they want to see. The HOA back then was run by retirees. Folks who loved rules about hedges and mailbox colors, but still waved at the trash guys and knew the guards by name. They weren't perfect, but they were predictable. Fees came in. Bills got paid. Nobody tried to optimize anything with buzzwords or apps. I kept my head down, paid my dues, and spent my evenings balancing my own books for fun. Peaceful, boring, exactly what I needed. My crew would sometimes swing by after a job, track a little dust onto my old carpet, sit at my tiny dining table, and talk about their kids and their problems. I'd cut them checks, make sure no one was falling behind on rent. They were my family now, and this quiet little condo in the middle of rich folks' fantasyland was our safe harbor. For a while, life was simple. Work hard, pay everyone on time, walk the course at sunset, talk to Denise's picture like she was still sitting in her armchair. No drama, no enemies, no games. Then one day, a brand new electric SUV glided through the gates, music thumping, and this tall, tan kid with a tank top and a swagger stepped out, shaking hands like he owned the place. That was the day Todd moved in, and peace didn't stand a chance. Todd didn't just move in, he took over. Within a month, there were glossy emails in everyone's inbox about modernizing the HOA with AI-powered financial tools. The retirees on the board looked relieved, like someone's grandson had finally come to fix their printer. They handed him the presidency like it was a TV remote. I first met him officially at a Saturday community improvement meeting by the clubhouse. I was there as a resident, minding my own business in my floral shirt and beat-up sandals, sipping bad coffee from a styrofoam cup. Todd was up front with a slideshow talking about optimizing costs and leveraging machine learning for vendor management. Halfway through, he points to a picture of the cracked private road leading from the gate to the inner loop. This eyesore is priority one, he says. We're bringing in a new vendor, getting a great deal. I'm going to negotiate hard so we don't get ripped off by some old-school contractor. Couple heads turned toward me. I'd pave half the county, including that community's parking lots, but Todd didn't recognize me. To him, I was just another old guy in the chairs. After the meeting, I was walking back toward my building when I heard, "Hey, you maintenance guy." I turned, and it was Todd, sunglasses on, thumbs flying over his phone. "You talking to me?" I asked. He gave me this once-over, like he was scanning a QR code. "Yeah. Do you know when the actual HOA vendor is coming to patch the potholes by building C? People keep tripping. We can't get sued." I felt my jaw clench, but I kept my voice even. "I don't work for the HOA. I own Johnson Paving. Your parking lots? Your tennis court walkways?" That was my old-school contractor work. He blinked, laughed once like he didn't quite believe me, then shrugged. "Oh, huh. Well, good for you, man." Then, like he was patting a dog, he added, "Guys like you are going to have to adapt, you know? The future is digital. We're not doing handshakes and gut feelings anymore." What he meant was, people like you should be grateful we still let you in through the gate. If you ever had someone talk down to you like that just because of how you look or what you do for a living, hit the like button so this story gets pushed to more people who know that feeling. A week later, the board sent out a notice. The HOA president was looking for bids to fully repave the main road. I got the email like everyone else. 10 minutes after I replied with proposal, my phone rang. "Hey, Hank, right?" Todd's voice was suddenly sugary. "Heard you're like the local asphalt legend. Maybe we can keep it in the community." The way he flipped from maintenance guy to legend that fast, it wasn't a compliment. It was a tell. He didn't respect me. He just thought he'd found someone he could squeeze. That was the first hairline crack in the road between us. And I've spent my life learning that tiny cracks always mean something's getting ready to break. Things got weird before they got ugly. At first, it was just little social ripples. I'd be walking back from my truck in the guest lot, still in my work boots, and I'd catch bits of conversation dying mid-sentence when I walked by. A couple of the older residents, people who used to stop and ask about my grandkids, suddenly got real interested in their phones when I waved. One morning, old Mr. Feldman from Building D stopped me at the mailboxes. He looked uncomfortable, twisting his keys in his hands. "Hank, son, I got a question for you. You don't have to answer if you don't want." "Shoot," I said. He glanced around, then lowered his voice. "Is it true you overcharged the HOA for past work, and that's why Todd is auditing everything? He said you did things on a handshake, and there were discrepancies." I just stared at him. "Discrepancies?" I repeated. Feldman's eyes flicked up, guilty. "Look, I told him you're a good man, but he said he had data. You know how these computer types talk." So that was Todd's first move, poison the well. The next week, the community app he pushed on everyone lit up with announcements. Little blurbs like, "Reminder, all vendors must now sign standardized contracts to avoid past issues with legacy contractors. Our goal is transparency and fairness." No names, but everybody knew who the legacy contractor was. Then came the sticky notes. One day I found a neon square slapped on my windshield. Resident parking is for residents, not work trucks. I looked around at the lot full of SUVs with ladders strapped on, landscapers' trailers, Amazon vans. Mine was the only one with a note. Another evening, my crew finished a job across town, and I invited 3 of the guys over for pizza at my place. They parked in visitor spots, all legal. We laughed. We ate. One of them FaceTimed his little girl to show her the golf course. Next morning, there was a formal notice on my door. Dear Mr. Johnson, multiple residents have expressed concern regarding the type of visitors you are bringing onto property. Please be reminded that this is a luxury community, and guests should maintain appropriate standards. HOA President, the type of visitors. I read that line over and over until my eyes burned. At the pool, I started hearing my own job talked about like a threat. We just have to trust Todd, one woman said, adjusting her sunglasses. He's cleaning up the old contracts. Some of these guys charge whatever they want because boomers don't understand the numbers. Another replied, yeah, my husband looked at the last paving bill. It was insane. I'm glad someone young is finally watching the money. I'd pave her driveway for a discount after her husband got laid off. Funny how people forget. When the road project officially got approved, the announcement didn't even mention my company by name. Just, we have secured a cost-effective vendor after correcting historical overbilling issues. The undercurrent was clear. If Hank gets paid, you're the victim. The strangest part was the silence from the board. The same old folks who used to ask me at meetings, Hank, does this price make sense? Now just nodded along as Todd talked about machine learning and cloud solutions. When I raised a hand once and gently corrected a projected materials cost he showed on screen, he smiled wide and said into the mic, appreciate your opinion, Hank, but we're using real data now. Every little humiliation was like a grain of sand in my boot. Not enough to stop me walking. Enough to never let me forget it was there. My guys noticed the shift too. Boss, why is security side-eyeing us when we drive in now? One asked. Another said his wife had heard at the hair salon that the paving company guy is under investigation for overcharging. Todd was using gossip as cheap armor, and it was working. People didn't have proof, but they had a story, and stories stick. Still, I signed the contract for the new road. Terms were clear. Work timeline, total amount, payment schedule, interest on late payment, and one small clause I'd learned the hard way to include, tucked neatly in the middle like it had always been there. I watched Todd flip through the pages on his tablet, barely skimming, more interested in the notification popping up on his smartwatch than the words he was agreeing to. He signed with a flourish. Don't worry, Hank. This time we'll do things right. He walked away whistling, thinking he just outsmarted the old maintenance guy. What he didn't realize was that the social game he was playing so casually was about to collide with a contract I knew better than the back of my own hand. The funny thing about Asphalt is, once it's down, everybody forgets how much work it took to get there. The week we started the road job, the whole community was out watching like it was a parade. My guys were laughing, sweating, moving like a machine. We milled the old surface, compacted the base, checked every slope so water wouldn't pool. I walked that road a dozen times on my clipboard, running my hand over the edge like a barber checking a fresh fade. Even Todd played the part. He came out with his protein shake, sunglasses on, recording us for some HOA progress update. On the app, we're really lucky to have a contractor like Hank, he said to his camera. He's old school. The way he said, old, tasted wrong. Still, the job went smooth. No delays, no change orders. When we laid the final layer, the whole stretch looked like black glass. Even the grumpiest residents were smiling, talking about how good their Teslas would ride on it. Per the contract, the final invoice was due 30 days after completion. I sent it over. Materials, labor, everything already agreed, nothing extra. Just numbers on a page we'd both sign off on. Day 30 came and went. No payment. I gave it a couple days. Things happen. Systems glitch. On day 33, I sent a polite email. Hey, Todd. Hope you're well. Just checking in about invoice number 472. Let me know if you need anything from my side. He replied 6 hours later. Hey, Hank. Yeah, we're switching our HOA accounting to a new AI-based platform. Might be a slight delay while the system reconciles past vendor entries. Should clear automatically. No need to worry. Look, no need to worry, he said. The next Friday, I was cutting checks on my crew and staring at the hole where the HOA payment should have been. I covered everybody out of my reserves. I always have a buffer, but it stung. Another week. Still nothing. I called this time. He answered on speaker. I could hear weights clanking in the background. Yo, Hank. Can't really talk, I mid-set. Won't take long, I said. That road bill's 2 weeks past due. My guys are waiting on that money, and the contract's pretty clear. He grunted like he was lifting something heavy, then laughed. Yeah, so funny thing. The AI flagged some irregularities. It thinks the job was overestimated on materials. Like by a lot. We're digging into it. I took a breath. Todd, you approved that estimate before we touched the ground. You watched the trucks roll in. There's nothing irregular about it. Relax, old-timer, he said, voice turning sharp under the fake humor. This is how it works now. We don't just blindly pay invoices because some boomer with a clipboard says so. I felt that one. Until this is resolved, he went on. I'm freezing payment. Also, just so you know, if there were Passover charges, our legal team could be looking at fraud. Would be a shame if that came back on you. Your legal team? I repeated. You mean those template letters from LegalZoom? He didn't like that. His tone went from smug to cold. You keep pushing Hank, and I'll show you how much power the HOA actually has. He hung up. That was the first punch. The second came from my own guys. One of my crew, Luis, pulled me aside after a job. Boss, can I talk to you? He asked, eyes down. Of course. He swallowed. My landlord gave me until the 15th. If I don't have the full rent, we're out. I know you're doing what you can, but that HOA check would have covered 2 months of his rent. Another guy's wife postponed a doctor's appointment because they couldn't afford the copay. Someone else was late on a truck payment. These weren't numbers on a spreadsheet. These were people who poured that road under Florida sun while the rest of the neighborhood watched from AC. And the guy who owed them acted like he was the victim. Then the official letters started. A certified envelope from the HOA arrived at my office. Due to ongoing financial review of vendor relationships, payment on your invoice is being temporarily withheld pending an AI-driven audit of scope and pricing. Please refrain from contacting individual board members directly. Further communication may be considered harassment. Harassment for asking to be paid. They even tried to use the gate against us. My crew's plate numbers were suddenly not recognized by the system. The guard, embarrassed, told us Todd had marked our trucks as restricted vendor access until billing issues are cleared. We had to sit there in the visitor lane like strangers while residents who'd waved at us during the work drove past on our beautiful, unpaid road. I went to a board meeting as a resident and stood up during the open comment period. Why hasn't the paving contractor been paid? I asked, voice steady but loud enough. Todd didn't look at me. He kept his eyes on his tablet. Due to ongoing investigation into potential overbilling, he said smoothly, we can't discuss vendor disputes in a public forum. It's confidential. But I assure everyone we're protecting the community from financial abuse. A couple heads nodded. One lady actually clapped. Financial abuse. That's how he framed paying my crew what they were owed. By then, the numbers weren't my biggest worry. I could survive a hit, but my guys couldn't. Watching their faces when I told them the check still hadn't come, that was the worst part. They trusted me, and Todd was using that trust as leverage, waiting to see if I'd cave, take less, or walk away. One night, staring at my ledger with every line balanced except one big ugly hole labeled HOA Todd, something inside me settled. Not anger, not even pride, just a cold, simple decision. This kid thought he could hide behind apps, AI, and HOA letterhead. He forgot one thing. All his fancy software was sitting on top of a road I built. And according to a certain little clause he never bothered to read, that road was still legally mine. Before I tell you what that clause said and how it turned his power trip into the dumbest mistake of his life, tell me in the comments, have you ever been stiffed by someone who thought you were too small to fight back? I didn't start out as the guy with the sneaky contract clause. I became that guy the hard way. Years ago, long before Todd ever learned what AI stood for, a different HOA president stiffed me on a much smaller job. Back then, my contract was simple. Scope, price, payment due. Handshake, signature, good faith. When the check never came, I went to a lawyer. He looked over the papers, sighed, and said, "You did good work, but you didn't protect yourself. You gave them the road. They gave you nothing." I still remember driving home from that meeting with an empty passenger seat where my wife should have been, staring at the wipers going back and forth, thinking, never again. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a pot of coffee and rewrote every contract my company used. I read sample agreements, case law summaries, boring articles with no pictures. Most guys in my line of work hate paperwork. I learned to love it. Paper is the only thing that speaks when no one wants to listen. Out of that long, lonely night came Clause 14C. On Todd's contract, it sat in the middle of page 3, between standard legal boilerplate, printed in the same font, no tricks. In the event of non-payment beyond 30 days of the due date, contractor retains the right to remove, reclaim, or otherwise render unusable any materials or improvements provided under this agreement at owner's expense until full payment plus applicable fees is received. Most people skim that and think it's just more legalese. Most people aren't used to their road having a return policy. The thing about Todd was he trusted technology more than he trusted people. He thought if something came from a template generator or an app, it was smarter than him, so he didn't have to pay attention. He tossed my printed hard copy aside and signed on his tablet, barely scrolling. He never asked why my clauses were so specific. See, numbers and patterns are my comfort zone. After Denise died, I needed something to occupy the quiet, so I started treating the HOA's public financial reports like bedtime reading. I'd download them, print them out, and sit there with a highlighter like I was grading homework. Not because I distrusted anyone, just because it made me feel in control. Before Todd showed up, the books were boring in the best way. Dues and bills out, reserves nice and steady. After Todd took over, the line items got fancy. Suddenly, there were new vendors with names like Sun Optima Solutions LLC and SmartFlow Consulting. Lots of tech services, cloud migration, AI audit fees. I might look like someone who has trouble with a smartphone, but a ledger is a ledger. Money leaving an account has to go somewhere real. One night, I laid the last 3 years of HOA reports side by side on my dining table. Pre-Todd, transition, Todd era. I circled every new vendor since he'd become president. Wrote down totals in the margins. That's when I noticed it. Certain consulting, charges, in and out, same range of numbers, slightly different descriptions each month. The kind of thing you'd miss if you trusted the pretty graphs on the app and never looked at raw figures. He wasn't just late paying me. He'd been quietly bleeding the HOA for months. I flipped to my own records, checked the timestamps on his emails, looked at the exact day he started talking about AI audits and irregularities. The story he told the community about protecting them from my overbilling didn't match the math. Todd thought I was just a guy with a shovel. What he didn't know was that I could read a balance sheet, like a map, and every arrow was pointing straight at him. Now I had 2 truths in my hands. A signed contract that said the road was mine until I got paid, and a growing suspicion that this kid was running a full-blown scam on my neighbors. I knew how to deal with the first one on my own. For the second, I was going to need help from someone who knew how to follow money that was trying very hard to disappear. I didn't have a law degree, but I knew how to build a paper trail. A few days after I figured out how bad Todd's numbers smelled, I called an all-hands meeting at my shop. Not the usual tailgate pep talk. This time we sat around the break room table with no pizza, just coffee and worry. "I'm going to ask y'all a question," I said, fingers laced. "Who here is personally hurting because that HOA check hasn't come in?" Hands went up, hesitantly at first, then all the way. Luis cleared his throat. "My wife says we're late on our car payment. If they take the car, I can't get to work." Another guy, Miguel, rubbed his forehead. "My boy's asthma meds. We've been stretching them. They're not cheap, Hank." That hit me harder than any insult Todd had thrown. Then one of my younger guys, Jamal, spoke up. "My wife's been telling me to say something," he said. "She works government stuff. Investigations. She looked at those HOA reports you printed. Said it felt off." I looked up government stuff like He shifted in his seat. FBI, he said quietly. White collar, mostly. She doesn't talk about it much. But when she saw those numbers, she got that look. That changed the temperature in the room. That night, I met them both at a little Cuban place off the highway. She walked in straight from work. Buttoned-up blouse, badge tucked away, eyes that missed nothing. Not flashy, not dramatic. Just sharp. Mr. Johnson, she said, shaking my hand. I've heard your name at our dinner table more than once. Jamal says you take care of your people. I slid a folder across the table. Trying to. This kid running our HOA is making it harder. Inside was everything. My contract with Todd, every email about AI audits, screenshots from the HOA app, printouts of financial reports with my circles and notes. Neat, labeled with dates. Years of habit, lined up in a cheap manila folder. She took her time looking through it. No gasps, no dramatic reactions. Just quiet page-turning and the occasional frown. Okay, she said finally. Let me be very clear. I can't just wave a magic wand and open a federal case because my husband's boss got stiffed. That's not how this works. I figured, I said, I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking if what I'm seeing looks like what you would call a problem. She tapped one page with her finger. These payments to Sun Optima Solutions? Same amounts, different descriptions. Routed to what looks like a shell company? That's a problem. The AI audit. Excuse for withholding your payment while these transfers continue? That's a bigger problem. She looked up at me. If this is what appears to be Hank, your unpaid invoice might be the smallest issue on his list. So what do we do? I asked. We document, she said. Everything. Every call, every email, every delay. Don't yell, don't threaten. Don't do anything that makes you look unstable. Be exactly what you are, reasonable and patient. Let him put his arrogance in writing. She gave me a simple checklist. Forward all HOA communications to a dedicated email. Save PDFs of the app announcements. Note dates and times of gate denial for my trucks. Keep copies of every certified letter. Jamal nodded along, already pulling out a notebook. And Hank, she added, don't tell him you're onto the bigger picture. Let him think this is just about one bill. For the next few weeks, I played the slow game. I sent Todd calm, professional messages, just circling back on invoice number 472. Per our agreement, payment is now X days overdue. His replies got sloppier and nastier. Our systems still flag an overage. You're lucky we haven't brought legal action for past invoices. We might have to alert other HOAs about your billing practices. I printed every word. Meanwhile, the tech vendors kept draining the HOA account in neat, repeating patterns. I knew because I kept downloading every new financial report they posted for transparency. Nobody else was reading them. They were too busy being impressed by the pie charts. After about a month, Jamal's wife called me. Okay, she said, we hit the point where this isn't just a grumpy contractor story. I passed your documents, sanitized without personal gossip, up the chain as a potential HOA embezzlement lead. Can't promise timing, but the right eyes are on it now. I appreciate that, I said, and I meant it. Just do me one favor, she added. Don't do anything dramatic without telling me first. I looked out the window at one of my trucks in the yard, the same one that led the convoy into the community later. I won't do anything illegal, I said, which technically was true. If you like seeing arrogant people caught with receipts instead of rumors, this is a part where you might want to hit that subscribe button. Because from here on out, every little move we made was setting up one big, beautiful trap. And Todd was walking straight into it, eyes glued to his smartwatch, no idea what was coming. I knew from experience you don't swing the hammer until the nail is all the way out. Jamal's wife called me one evening and said, they're looking, slowly, but they're looking. If you want maximum impact, you're going to need him on record admitting what he's doing to you. Lucky for us. I said, Todd loves to talk. Step one of the bait was boring on purpose. I sent a formal, politely worded final notice before Remedy's letter by certified mail and email. No threats, no name-calling. Just, Per Clause 14C of our agreement, payment is now X days overdue. If full payment is not received within 10 business days, I will exercise my contractual right to reclaim materials and improvements provided under this contract. I highlighted that clause in yellow on the PDF. I wanted his eyes to trip over it. He didn't reply by email. Instead, he called me on video chat from his home office, neon gaming lights behind him like he was streaming. "Okay, Hank," he said, smirking. "You sent your scary little letter. Feel better now?" "I feel fine," I said. "Just making sure you understand your options." He laughed. "My options? Here's what's going to happen. You're going to accept a reduced payment after our AI recalculates the real cost. If you push this, I'll open a dispute, freeze you out of every HOA in the county, and maybe mention those historical overbilling concerns to a few people. You won't like what that does to your reputation." I glanced at the corner of my screen where a small red glowed. "Todd," I said, "are you saying on record that you intend to unilaterally change a signed contract and withhold payment as leverage?" He blinked. "On record? What are you, a cop?" "No," I said. "I'm a contractor who reads his contracts." His jaw tightened. "You touch that road, Hank, I'll have you arrested. I run this HOA. You're just a guy they let through the gate to sweep up." There it was. Entitlement, threat, and ignorance, all bundled nicely in HD. I saved the recording to 3 different drives. Step 2 of the bait was public. The next board meeting, I showed up 10 minutes early in my usual floral shirt, sat in the second row, and waited. When the floor opened for resident comments, I stood. "I just want clarity," I said. "I provided a service. The community is using it every day. Payment is overdue by over 60 days. Am I correct that the HOA has chosen not to pay?" Todd jumped in before any of the older board members could speak. "We are in an AI-driven audit phase," he said, voice smooth for crowd. "There have been serious questions raised about Mrs. Johnson's billing, both in this project and historically. Out of respect for privacy, I won't go into detail, but we're protecting you." A murmur ran through the room. Someone whispered, "So he did overcharge?" I kept my face calm. "So to be clear," I said, "you're publicly suggesting my company is engaged in fraud?" Todd shrugged, spread his hands. "If the shoe fits." Every second of that meeting was recorded in the official minutes and streamed on the app. Jamal's wife practically sent me a confetti emoji when she watched it later. "He just handed you defamation and bad faith on a silver platter," she said. Step 3 was quiet. I sent one last email, no drama, just a time-stamped line in the sand. "Since payment remains outstanding and you have expressly stated your refusal to honor the agreed amount, I will be exercising my contractual right to reclaim materials on date, unless full payment is received before close of business on earlier date." I CC'd the general HOA email, not just Todd. I wanted every half-asleep board member and their grandkid who checked their inbox to see it. No response. Not even a thumbs-up emoji. In the background, the investigation wheels were turning. Jamal's wife couldn't tell me details, but she did ask one pointed question. If, hypothetically, there were a very public event involving that road, could you give me 24 hours heads up on the date and time? I smiled. Hypothetically? Sure. So I picked a Monday morning. Early enough that folks would be leaving for work, late enough that everyone would be awake to see it. I booked my crew, prepped the trucks, laminated copies of the contract with Clause 14C highlighted in fluorescent yellow. The bait was simple. Give Todd every chance to do the right thing, in writing and in front of witnesses. He chose wrong. Every single time. By the end of that week, the trap was set. My unpaid road under his feet, his threats recorded in my files, his fake AI audit, dripping money into shell accounts someone in a federal building was now watching very closely. All that was left was to drive the first truck through the gate. Monday morning, 8:15 a.m., the Florida sun already trying to cook us alive. I rolled up the gate in the lead truck, convoy behind me, low boys dump trucks, the excavator riding like a steel dinosaur. The security guard, Carlos, stepped out of the booth, eyes wide. "Hank, what's all this?" he asked. I handed him a folder through the window. Copy of the contract. Copy of the notice email. Copy of Clause 14C, highlighted. You're going to want to show that to whoever starts yelling. He skimmed the first page, eyebrows climbing. Then he hit the intercom button. Todd, you need to come down here. Now! By the time we cleared the gate, phones were already out. Residents in athleisure and bathrobes lined the sidewalk, filming as our trucks crawled up the brand-new road. I stepped out of my usual floral shirt, hard hat under my arm, laminated contract in hand. My guys waited by the machines, engines rumbling low, looking to me for the go signal. Todd burst out his glass house like he'd been launched, tank top, gym shorts, face red. "What the hell is this?" he shouted. "You can't bring heavy equipment in here without authorization." I held up the contract. "You already authorized it, Todd. Remember? When you hired us to build this road." He stomped up, jabbing a finger at my chest. "You touch 1 inch of that asphalt, and I swear I'll violate Clause 14C even more than you already have." I cut in, flipping to the highlighted paragraph. I read out loud, slow and clear so every recording neighbor caught every word. When I finished, there was a ripple through the crowd. Somebody actually said, "Wait, he can do that." Todd snatched at the papers. I pulled them back. "You think that mumbo-jumbo holds up?" he snapped. "I'm the HOA president. I decide what happens to common property." Behind him, 3 older board members had shuffled out, still in their morning clothes. Mrs. Kaplan squinted at the pages. "Todd, did you sign this?" He laughed too loud. "It's boilerplate." He's bluffing. "Besides, he overbilled us. I'm protecting you from getting scammed by a boomer contractor who doesn't understand the digital age." I could have argued. Instead, I stepped back and turned to crowd. "Folks," I said, raising my voice just enough, "my crew paved this road on time, on budget, under a signed agreement. We've been waiting over 2 months to be paid. These men have families, rent, medicine, groceries. I sent notice, gave extra time, asked nicely. I was told your AI decided not to pay us." There was a low murmur. A couple of the retirees looked at each other, uneasy. "So today," I continued, "I'm exercising the only leverage you left me. I'm taking back what I built. When I'm paid, you get your road. Until then," I turned to my guys. "Boys." They didn't hesitate. The excavator roared to life, rolling forward. The first bite of the bucket sank into the pristine blacktop with a crunch that echoed off the condo walls. Chunks of asphalt curled up like torn carpet. People gasped. Someone shouted, "My Tesla!" Another yelled, "You can't do this." A jogger stopped dead, eyes huge. Todd lost it. "Stop! Stop!" he screamed, running toward the excavator. Carlos stepped in front of him, hands up, quietly blocking his path. "You're trespassing." Todd yelled at me, "This is criminal damage. I'll have the cops drag you out of here in handcuffs." I kept my voice calm. "Call them. I'll show them the contract you signed and the invoices you ignored." One of the older board members, Mr. Feldman, was reading the pages, his face going pale. "Todd," he said slowly, "it does say right here, in case of non-payment, he has the right to reclaim." Todd whirled on him. "You don't understand this stuff. That's why you put me in charge." Actually, a new voice cut in. "That's exactly the problem." A dark SUV had just rolled up behind our trucks. 2 people stepped out, plain clothes, badges hanging from lanyards. Jamal's wife met my eyes for half a second, then turned to Todd. "Todd Milton?" she asked. "We'd like to talk to you about some irregularities in the HOA's financials." You could have heard a pin drop. Todd bravado cracked. "This is harassment," he sputtered. "I told you, our books are clean. We're using AI to..." She held up a tablet. "Your AI is very creative about routing HOA funds into shell companies you control. Sun Optima Solutions? Smart Flow Consulting? Ring a bell?" Mrs. Kaplan's hand flew to her mouth. Mr. Feldman actually staggered back a step. "So here's what's going to happen," she said calmly. "You're going to come with us and answer some questions. The HOA board will be advised to cooperate fully. She glanced at the torn-up road, then at me, and any outstanding debts to vendors will be part of that conversation. Todd looked around, desperate, realizing for the first time every phone was pointed at him. Not me. You set me up, he hissed at me. I shrugged. You set yourself up. I just kept the receipts. As they walked him toward the SUV, he twisted over his shoulder and shouted, "This isn't over." I looked down at the broken strip of asphalt, then at my crew, then back at him. "For you?" I said. "Yeah, it is." If you were standing there that morning, watching the HOA golden boy get walked off while the road he refused to pay for got peeled up under his feet, what would you have shouted from the sidewalk? Let me know in the comments, because the way this community flipped after that was something to see. In the days after Todd got driven out in that unmarked SUV, the neighborhood felt like a beehive somebody had kicked. At first, it was all gossip. People stopped me in the lobby, at the mailboxes, by the pool. "Hank, did you know he was stealing from us? Is it true he never paid you for road? Did the FBI really show up because of your paperwork?" I just kept the same answer. I knew something was wrong. I did what I had to do to protect my guys. But behind the scenes, things started moving fast. The board called an emergency meeting. Without Todd, they invited me not as a contractor, but as a resident affected by his decisions. Mrs. Kaplan looked 10 years older as she read a prepared statement. Financial irregularities, suspected embezzlement, cooperation with federal authorities. The same people who nodded along when Todd talked about AI audits were now staring at spreadsheets like they'd woken up from a bad dream. First order of business. They voted to formally terminate Todd as HOA president and ban him from holding any position of authority in the community, pending the outcome of the investigation. The motion passed unanimously. Second order. They opened a discussion about outstanding obligations to Johnson Paving. I slid a simple packet across the table. No drama, no padding, just the original invoice, interest calculations per contract, and a separate line item for the cost of bringing my crew back, running the machines to tear up the road, hauling away material. Mr. Feldman cleared his throat. "So we owe you this much?" "Yes, sir," I said. "And legally, I could have added more. But I'm not here to bleed anybody dry. I want my men paid, my costs covered, and this community back on solid ground." There was a long pause. Then he nodded. "I move we pay this in full." Immediately, they wrote the check that afternoon. A few weeks later, I got a letter from a U.S. Attorney's office confirming what we'd suspected. Todd had been using the HOA accounts as his personal ATM. Fake tech vendors, shell companies, AI-generated invoices that looked real unless you knew what to look for. Turns out, the same intelligence he bragged about was a great Exhibit A. He didn't go down for stiffing me. He went down for defrauding the whole community. But that unpaid road, that was the thread that got pulled first. As part of the fallout, insurance kicked in. The HOA's fidelity bond, something most people never think about, helped cover a big chunk of what Todd stole. But there was a condition. They had to overhaul their governance and financial procedures. Guess who they asked to sit on the audit committee? I didn't take a board seat. I had no interest in arguing about pool hours and pet policies. But I did agree to help them untangle their books, set up real checks and balances, and write vendor contracts that couldn't be twisted by the next smooth-talking tech genius. We renegotiated my road job properly, through a transparent vote. This time, every resident saw the numbers, the scope, the timeline. When we repaved, people actually came out with coolers of water for my crew, handing bottles through the fence like we were heroes instead of hired help. As for Todd, word travels fast in the HOA world. Once the investigation became public record, no association in Florida would touch him. His consulting business dried up overnight. The house with the glass walls and the smart everything went up for sale, then to pre-foreclosure, then finally to auction. But that part of the story has its own little twist. I'll get to that in a second. But if seeing a bully with a clipboard get replaced by a man with a shovel and a spine felt even a little satisfying, hit that like button. It tells the algorithm this kind of justice is worth showing to more people who've been on the wrong side of a power trip. A few months after everything went down, life settled into a new kind of quiet. Most mornings, I still start the day the same way. Coffee in my old chip mug, standing by the window of my two-bedroom, looking out over the golf course. From up here, the road looks like a dark ribbon threading through community, smooth and clean again. My crew did that twice now. First time for a liar. Second time for people who finally understood what it takes to keep a place standing. Inside, nothing's changed. Same 90s furniture, same beige carpet, same framed photos of Denise smiling like she knows the punchline before I do. Some nights, I still talk to her picture. Guess what, D? I'll say, straightening a frame, your boys got every dime they were owed, plus interest. My guys don't worry about that HOA job anymore. Paychecks come on time. Luis caught up on his rent. Miguel's boy is breathing easy on the right meds. Jamal swapped his old beater for something that actually starts without prayer. It's boring, ordinary stuff, the kind of boring that feels like luxury when you've been on the edge. The community changed, too. The board brought in an outside accountant with no ties to anyone. They set real rules. 2 signatures on big payments. Quarterly open book sessions where anyone can sit and ask questions. And at the first meeting under the new system, Mrs. Kaplan did something I never thought I'd see. She stood up, adjusted her glasses, and said, "We owe Mr. Johnson an apology. We let ourselves be dazzled by gadgets and buzzwords and forgot to respect the people who actually build things." Then she turned to me and added, "If you ever see numbers that don't look right again, Hank, don't wait. Tell us." I nodded. "Don't worry," I said. I read the fine print. As for Todd's monument to himself, the Glass and Gadget House, time and debt did what pride couldn't stop. It went to auction in a quiet room with fluorescent lights and bad coffee. On paper, some young couple bought it. A man in a shirt that still smelled faintly of asphalt and a woman whose badge stayed tucked in her purse. What nobody in that room knew was that I'd wired part of the money ahead of time, filling the gap they couldn't cover. No note, no handshake, no speech. Just numbers moving quietly the way they're supposed to. Jamal tried to thank me later. I waved him off. "You and your wife helped save a lot more than a paycheck," I said. "Consider this me paving a little road back your direction." Now, when I drive past that smart house, there's a little girl's bike in the yard. Chalk drawings on the new driveway we poured at cost. The cameras still blink. The lights still dim on command. But the person inside actually earned them. Every so often, someone at the pool or in the elevator will lower their voice and say, "Hank, can you take a look at this letter my HOA sent?" Something feels off. I don't go looking for trouble, but I do read their papers. Old habit. Because here's what I've learned, standing in the same dusty boots in front of 100 different gates. People think power lives in titles and apps, in smartwatches and dashboards. But power lives in who shows up at sunrise, in who signs the checks, in who actually builds a road, and who isn't afraid to take it back when they're pushed too far. And the thing about HOAs, for every Todd that gets caught, there's another one somewhere else, smiling for the newsletter, thinking folks like me don't know how to read. They're not ready for how well we can. In that neighborhood, the war with the HOA was over. But for those who know the system from the inside, they know there's always another committee present somewhere who thinks they're above the law. Subscribe to the channel and watch the absurd story that occurred at another HOA. Click on the video that's currently appearing on your screen.